Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Amsterdam, Season 3, Episode 20. And today I have with me Miss Liz from WTF Just Happened. How you doing today, Liz?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. I am very well. So before we get
You like to tell us about yourself?
Sure. My name's Liz Entin. I am the founder, author, and podcast host of. Can I say the full name of it?
You can,
What the
yes, you
fuck?
can. You can say,
Okay. What the fuck just happened? The book is What the Fuck Just Happened. A sciencey skeptic explores grief, healing, and evidence of the afterlife. And the podcast is also What the Fuck Just Happened. Spelled both are spelled WTF. And What the Fuck Just Happened, all about the afterlife, no woo. So excited to share my stories about that with you, all of you.
okay, so, well, I'm guessing, well, I've seen from your thing from on your on WTH just happened, WTF just happened.net. You got into the afterlife after, your dad passed away.
Yes, that's true. And I started examining the scientific evidence of an afterlife because I was raised very, atheist, science minded, logical. So, I wanted science, not belief or spirituality.
Oh, say so. This was how you were raised. You was raised as an atheist.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, pretty much. It was just culturally Jewish, but I was in a very secular culture overall in New York. So it wasn't the type of atheist where, you examine and come to choose it. It was just like religion was kind of a non-issue beyond just a cultural thing in my life. It was just pretty irrelevant. It just never really came up, was never something I ever would have thought about.
Okay, so your reason to determine that's basically just not a cultural thing. That was your reasoning why you didn't determine that God did not exist.
I mean, I kind of believe I'll use the Carl Sagan quote, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I feel sort of the burden of proof would be on proving a God exists. So, and I just never saw evidence of that. It just never really crossed my mind either. So,
Okay, so it never crossed your mind. So
no.
there's no objectivity or nothing, anything that can change your mind. So you just believe into the science.
I mean, no, well, any evidence, well, I hope I'm the kind of person where evidence will always change my mind, but I just haven't seen I've seen evidence of afterlife, but I haven't seen an evidence of a God. I'm open if I see the evidence, great. So I don't yeah, I try to always be the kind of person who would change my mind in the face of evidence.
Okay, so you said you believe. So you've seen the afterlife. So you know the afterlife. So I'm gonna go to the question that you gave. So what is the most compelling evidence of the afterlife then?
Okay, so I can't say I've seen the afterlife. I've seen data and had some interesting, inexplicable experiences. I would say the most compelling evidence is a combination. First of all, the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia has a group of scientists and researchers that are studying near-death experiences, cases of kids with past life memories, and another group called Windbridge, as well as Division of Perceptual Studies, are studying psychic mediums, putting them up to quintuple blinded studies to see if they can get accurate information. And I mean, so when you put all this data together and the fact that these amazing, very logical scientists are studying it, I'd say that is the most compelling evidence in a vast body. And then it's when you put the whole body together, it's just kind of amazing.
So what amazes you about it? I mean, as far as like you said, it's amazing. So if I'm walking into it, what would amaze you with that you could sell me on it that would amaze me into it?
I guess I can say that I have now read repeated studies and had personal experiences that defy the laws of physics as we understand them to be, which seems to be that our consciousness is downloaded by our brain and not created by our brain. And to me, that's just amazing. I mean, I've seen things that are going against the laws of physics. I can give one very concrete example. I once bent a spoon and I just thought that was a magic trick until I did it.
Hold
So
up, how did you bend the spoon with your hand?
with my hand, it was mostly batshit. I went to a workshop. I didn't even know they were going to be doing spoon bending at this. I started to hear about it, and I'd always thought it was stage magic. So the next thing I know, I'm trying to do it, and I feel the spoon get really, really hot. I'd already tried to bend it because it was one of the activities, and I couldn't bend it. You know, I tried my strength and tested it. Then the next thing I know, we get into like the part where we're supposed to actually bend it. Everyone, like, they kind of get everyone really energetic and silly. And you look at the spoon, everyone like yells bend, and I think they started playing music. And I felt it get super, super hot and really soft. And I just bent it over. And I mean, that is something that by the laws of physics as we understand them should not happen. And I guess I bent a spoon, and you're looking at me. I don't look like I'm strong. I'm not strong. So.
Okay. So that was one of your concrete evidence of, afterlife, because of the 5 laws of physics, that you was actually able to bend that spoon, which you weren't able to supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would tie it into the afterlife because it shows that our consciousness can interact with objects outside of a body in some way. It was impacting an object, not related to like material item on material item, if that makes sense. Okay. For lack of a better way to say it.
Okay, so you said in the afterlife. So, like, if the afterlife, like, where do we go? Like, what?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? That's what I'm hoping we can have answered. It seems to be, if I could guess, so that we go into a lot of different states. Sometimes that are, my guess would be, our consciousness is a quantum particles, non-local, and at times it's downloaded by our brains. And at other times, when you leave the body, it's not connected to a brain, and somehow probably tied in with dimensions, maybe tied in with string theory. Our consciousness is not created by a brain, but downloaded by it. And where is that? I mean, that's the question. And what's it made of? I don't know. I'm hoping at some point we get a machine that's significantly better than the Large Hadron Collider and can measure whatever this consciousness is.
So, you basically, like, kind of, I'm guessing, I would say, to put it in layman's term, Dr. Hank Pym from Ant-Man, and say we go into a quantum realm.
I would guess it's a form of quantum realm. Yes. But if I could guess, it's probably different stages. I think there's sort of a misconception that you live one life and then in all of eternity, it's an afterlife. My guess is there are different states of consciousness that we experience through different times. That'd be my guess.
Okay. So when we go to this place where we go into this realm or wherever, is there somebody to help a person there to cross over to this life?
There seems to be. So there are near-death experiences, and those are when people physiologically pass away and are then revived and brought back to life with, through medicine. There's nothing like potentially woo about that. And as medicine gets better and, we're able to bring people back more from heart attacks or accidents, we're getting more and more of this data. And people report going to other realms and seeing loved ones who are there to help them cross over. And since we can't really talk to anyone who hasn't come back, they're usually told it's not your time, or some of them are given the choice. And, there's just vast bodies of data on that. Again, University of Virginia has a department that's studying that, run by Dr. Bruce Grayson. And then there's reports of this. Some are kind of, that are backed up, the ones there's a consistency in that people report this, but then there's also evidence because people will say they're floating out of their body and report on factual things they could not have known, such as a conversation at their home while they were in the hospital, and then they verified the conversation, or they've seen deceased people there and they didn't know they had passed away. So those are the ones that are really evidential.
So if those are evidential right there, so basically saying soul's release. So how does the soul release from an earthly plane?
I don't know.
There's no study.
I don't think that's answerable because we don't know what the mechanisms by which this works. There's a little bit of a theory but it's very early stage, that there's a part of our brain called microtubules. And this is studied by two researchers, Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir
That's
Roger
when
Penrose.
I mean, that's that part. I don't mean to cut you up, but the
Oh,
microtubule,
no.
that's basically like when the brain kind of like speeds up enough way as though you really can't. Well,
No.
you explain it then.
Sure. It's thought to be a part of the brain that could quantum entangle,
Mhm.
and then we don't know at all beyond that, or what form of quantum, particles the consciousness is, but it's a part of our brain that could quantum entangle with consciousness that's not in our brain. And this is said by those two researchers I mentioned, who both won Nobel Prizes. Dr. Stuart Hameroff has worked with Stephen Hawking. Both of them might have. I have to double check on that, but they're not, they're Nobel Prize winning physicists. They're not, they're fairly reliable people. And they're the ones who have discovered microtubules and have a theory behind them, thinking that is a possibility of how this might work. Now, what form this consciousness takes, I mean, no one knows.
Oh, no one knows. So, I mean, I guess we would go.
I
So,
don't know how we would know.
well, that was be the next question. How did you go from thinking PSI abilities and an afterlife are nonsense to thinking is real?
Oof, many years and a lot of research. It was not overnight. So, a lot of the research I mentioned at the Division of Perceptual Studies and Windbridge, I read study after study on psychic mediums. And an example of one, they would have mediums call into Windbridge at a certain time, and a person would be there. They're called a sitter, and they're the ones who get the reading from the medium. So they were calling a phone number at Windbridge. They weren't calling a person's phone number. I mean, nothing they could Google, essentially.
Okay.
And they would have to get accurate information on this person over the phone that they weren't seeing. They'd have to get like hobbies, relationship of their deceased loved one. This is a stranger. And some of the mediums were getting up to 90% accuracy. They were getting jobs and memories. And yeah, absolutely batshit. I see your face.
No, because I'm saying no, because you said they were getting readings. I'm thinking like readings from where? Where were they getting these readings from?
The mediums were giving the information that's called a reading, or giving it to this person who was sitting on the phone, and they didn't know who the person was. All they had was their first name and to call in. And some of them, the person getting the reading would just say yes, no, or maybe. And some of them, they were silent and would just hit a button. One button meant yes, one meant no, and one meant maybe. So in case they might be picking up on voice cues. And this is a tiny portion in a vast body of research. So it was just reading study after study like that. Studies of cases of kids with past life memories being conducted by child psychiatrists. And then I started my own experiences. I got some of my own medium readings, hid my identity, Google voice number, fake email, fake name, had a friend pay with their card. And some of them were new stuff they could not have known. And some were the phone. So, they weren't doing anything like facial recognition technology. And even if they had, they knew things that are not Googleable.
So what were some of the things that they knew in these readings that you found out, that they found out about you?
Well, okay. So, I mean, so many things. One knew one of my dad's main hobby. A few of them knew, unfortunately, my cat had passed away shortly after my dad. And few of them knew. The very first one I went to, she said, your cat who just passed away is with your dad. They knew my grandma and I were really alike. And interestingly, consistently, my grandma comes in first in most of my readings. They knew we were really alike. They knew she had lost a child when the child was very young, like still a baby. They knew so many things. One described a dresser in my parents' bedroom, and like that one of the handles was missing and it was brown and gold. Let's see, some kind of got my dad's personality, which I thought was really interesting. Like one she said at the end, she was like, well, I was going to ask him, do you want to tell your daughter you love her? And the medium said, kind of laughed and said, he said, I don't need to do that. She knows what I think. And that's so my dad. So just, and some readings were terrible and some were but I mean, quite a few just knew things they could not have known.
So what were some of the worst mediums that you had for the readings?
Oh God. Okay. So there's a few that just really tried and probably weren't very evidential. And there were two I went to that were completely fake. One, I knew she was going to be fake. I just wanted to test it because she's one of those like storefront ones, that you go in for $5. I was like, she hasn't been studied by university scientists or anything. I know this is going to be fake, but I want to see what happens. And, one thing I noticed is she would say two different things going on the belief that you will remember what you want to, you'll remember what fits and what doesn't. Like one part of the reading, she was giving more psychic information, which is information about me, than mediumistic information, which is about someone who passed away. So in one example, she said, you're really good with money and saving. And then a little bit later, she said, money comes in one hand and out the other. And I was kind of like, so which one is it? And the philosophy behind that is cold reading. And the thought is that, you've got most people who go into this believe it. And then you'll remember the part that you relate to and sort of disregard the other. And, then she said a lot of stuff that just applies to everybody. Like, I'd had a relationship that hadn't worked out. And then she tried to sell me $300 candles to clear my energy. And I was like, oh, great. Yeah, I'll be back for those. So
$300 candles from where?
She probably bought them for like $1 from like bulk at Walmart. I don't know. She has them. She said they were energy healing clearing candles and $300 each. And I need to clear my energy. So yeah, don't ever pay $300 for anything to clear your energy.
You're like what you just stated to me as far as like you said storefront, more like a Ponzi scheme. Like one of them commercials that come on is like, well, like Miss Cleo, she did some jail time for it. Those 1-800 numbers that they tell you call and they can do your readings, or you can go to these houses that you see on the street and they can go in there and read your palm and tell you what you want to tell you. So are they real or not?
I don't think those are real. I don't think so. Could out of like 10,000 of them, one of them be real? Sure. But no, I think the odds that one of those mediums is going to be real is significantly like minuscule. Yeah. And then another one I went to that was fake. She was like very like shishi and fancy and not one of those stores and had like the perfect website. I didn't know she was going to be fake, but she was very clearly fake because she was getting nothing evidential. And she asked, when I wasn't giving her information, she was like, well, what do you even want to get out of this reading? So I said, scientific evidence that we survive bodily death in some way. And I want you to say things that you can't know. And she basically like just started saying so much nonsense. And then she was like, kind of kept saying that my father, I had to tell her I lost my father too. She didn't get that. And then she kept saying things like, your father's telling you you need to be more trusting. And, he's telling you need to learn to open this. And the whole point of this reading is for you to learn to give yourself the evidence. You don't get it from other people. I mean, just so much nonsense. And it was ridiculous. But it was a good comparison and good for my book. So
that's what I was getting ready. My next thing to say, tell us about, you go to these, the Windbridge Research Center Afterlife Symposium. You go to those?
I haven't been to that symposium. I've gone to the Fervor Family Foundation events. I've gone to some other events and I know Windbridge. I've gone to some events that Dr. Julie Beischel and Mark Bacuzzi, the heads of it, have founded. And I've gone to I've read all the Windbridge studies. And and I've met them and I've gone to medium readings with Windbridge certified mediums. So I know everything pretty well that's going on at Windbridge, but I haven't gone to their symposiums. Which I don't think they've had in person in a long time. So Windbridge, that was one of the studies I told you about, was the up to quintuple blinded studies on psychic mediums. And they do a lot of research on seeing if there's evidence of an afterlife and is it possible to survive bodily death. And they it's just a lot. And they also just do research testing if we have psi abilities, like any like psychic telepathy. They're one of the places that do that, but their focus has been on afterlife and mediumship, and they're expanding a little bit into grief and studying psychology and how this evidence affects grief. But I'm most interested in the science of survival.
So you went into survival. So you say grief, like how do you deal with this? As far as like you have the whole afterlife thing, and you joined the dead dads group after your dad passed away.
Yeah.
And like, so how do you deal with the grief and loss of a parent?
Oof. I mean, there is no right or wrong way. That's one thing I learned, is every single person's going to come out of the woodworks, especially those who've never had a loss, and start telling you what you should and shouldn't be doing, and telling you the timeline you're supposed to have and what you need to do. Don't listen to any of that. Like, every single person needs to do what they need to do, which is really unique to them. And for me, it just profoundly changed me. This is when I started investigating this evidence, and I made a lot of changes in my life. I met just really amazing people while doing this research, and I feel like I've made new friends and deeper friends. I mean, it's something people seem to think you grieve for a while and then it's gone. And that's absolutely, unfortunately, not true. It's something that's there the rest of your life. It just integrates more into your life. And you can still be happy again, which was something I was really worried about. Would you ever feel happy again after a big loss? And yeah, I can promise everyone you do.
Okay, so when you join the group, so the friends that you wind up getting on a deeper level with, they're from this group?
Some of them, yeah, a lot of them. And some are people who've had losses too, who attend Forever Family Foundation. That's the main place I go to their events, and I volunteer for them doing their social media. And that's where I've developed a lot of deep friendships with people involved with that group in different ways. And, I also notice, I think there's friends that were more surface before, that people I knew otherwise, not related to any of this research. And some of those friendships have deepened. And then other friends, kind of go our separate ways. So it's a profoundly life-changing thing. But what is it? It's called like traumatic growth. And I think you can grow from it. I don't recommend it. It's not necessarily worth it, but there is, and I don't want that to sound like toxic positivity. Like, I'm grateful for this loss. I'm not, but there still is traumatic growth. And I feel like my life is better now in many ways, and I like myself better, and there's more depth to my life. But
why would you say that you like yourself better now?
I think, how do I explain this? I think it's just, there's more, I don't know, it's myself as much as parts of my life. Like, there's a lot more, I feel there's more depth to my life. I feel like I've changed what my life goals are in ways.
What are those goals?
Like, it used to just be much more about like myself, like having a really good time. I knew I wanted to make a lot of money. I wanted to be successful, but having fun, and, definitely wanted to meet someone, have kids, and make a ton of money. And not that I don't want those things, but there's a whole aspect that I want to help the world. And you can still have businesses that make money and help the world, but it's much more about, like, I think helping other people has become really important. And I mean, if you asked me before, I would have said that, but this is on a deeper level, I think. And I feel like I like, the people I'm around, of just friendships have deepened. There's also another level of curiosity. I mean, I never in a billion years would have thought I would do what I'm doing now with researching evidence of an afterlife. And I think that's just kind of been a fascinating surprise and just so interesting.
So what have you come up with? I know you said you did the Windbridge Research Center and all that. So what has Miss Liz come up with? What type of research have you come up with?
Well, I haven't conducted professional experiments or research, but I'll say, well, bending the spoon. And then interestingly, I went to other events with spoon bending again and some, psychic mediums. It was a much smaller group. There were like 6 of us in the group, and there was a bunch of psychic mediums and me. And I was the only one who couldn't then bend a spoon. I only did it once. So that was kind of an experiment because I was with these people that say they have abilities that I don't have. So I would not be able to bend the same spoons that they were able to bend. I would try, couldn't do it, hand it to them, and they could bend them. And we're all like smaller size women, about the same size. Like, it's not like I'm handing them to like a weightlifter. I'd say some of my own psychic medium readings. I've gotten quite a few readings, and I hide my identity and I score the readings afterwards, and they get it's just unbelievable, the evidence they get. It's amazing. So that's some evidence. The reading, it's, I've taken classes where I get to try experiments. Like I took a class, I've taken classes at a place called the Rhine Education Center, and we had ones where we were doing out of body experiences and others where we did remote viewing. And so I got to try experiments, and I can't say I'm the best one in the class by any means, but I've had some interesting things happen in both of those. So, and it's just constantly. So like reading, me getting to know some of the mediums personally, and I see that they're logical people, getting some signs from the other side. Like I feel like I'm constantly making little like tiny experiments. Like, I want to see this, I want this to happen, and then weird little things will happen. And I'm not talking about like things that can be easily explained away, especially when they keep happening. So, I can give an example if you want of one
I'm
of those.
listening. Give you example.
Okay. Okay. Well, here's one example. So this isn't a sign from my dad, but it's the most interesting recent sign that I would say I just got. A friend of mine who's writing a book. God, I feel terrible. I forgot the name, but it's like Dimes from Heaven. She has a series. This is one of the new books in the series, and it's about getting signs from her dad after he passed away. And it's dimes. So she asked me to read her book and write like a little blurb about it, like her newest book that's not out yet. And I like said to whoever, like, I want you guys to give me a dime when I finish this. I don't use cash ever. I don't think I've used cash since before the pandemic. If I have to use cash at all, I can't say never since the pandemic, but it's so rare. It's like,
is that a reason? Part of this whole research thing about using money or cash? I should say.
No. It's just I'm like techie millennial. I'd much rather just use my Apple Pay. Like, I don't want it to go to the bank. It's just a pain in the ass to use cash. So okay. I just don't. I like technology, so I just haven't used cash. And at the off chance I have, maybe like once or twice a year, I don't take coins. Like, I'll just be like, keep like the 20 cents, whatever. And so I said, I want to see a dime right when I finish this. The day after I finished the book, a dime was sitting in the middle of my floor. I'm like, that's weird. That's like really weird. So, and I have a lot of things like that happen since studying all this. And I don't know what to say. Part of me wonders, like, could I have planted this myself, like dissociated and like found a dime somewhere? But I don't really have lost time. I'm pretty busy, and I think I would notice if like an hour of my life disappeared while I went to try to track down a dime, which in our like fairly cashless moving culture isn't the easiest thing to go do. Right. I would have had to. So I think I would have noticed if I dissociated to that level. And I don't dissociate. I tend to be a pretty like semi-type A person, like super busy and aware of my schedule. So, but I don't want to rule that stuff out, because you can't, if you're going to be scientific, you have to go for every possibility.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say about your schedule, because it seems to me that the what the fuck just happened podcast, book, everything goes back and forth from New York to LA.
It's not necessarily based on the project. I actually have two companies. My other one's called Why Get Wasted, and we help events go zero waste. And both are really like a lot of work. And I go back and forth to LA just because I like both cities, and I can do my job from anywhere. And I can sublease out each apartment, do a few like winters, the coldest months in LA, and then go back to New York for the summers. And I figure it's just one of the advantages of working for myself. So
Okay. So with your studies of other people's scientific studies and research being done on the afterlife evidence, like what mediums or near death, mediums, near death experience, or reincarnation, what are the best scientific studies for those three?
okay, so I'll start with reincarnation. I tend to use the word like past lives just because reincarnation sounds too like spiritual for me, but I know that's the word people relate to. It's definitely the work by currently Dr. Jim Tucker and his mentor who has passed away, Dr. Ian Stevenson, child psychiatrists and professors at the University of Virginia. They're part of also the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia, and they have the most science-based evidential studies on cases of kids with past life memories. The most famous one is James Leininger, and that one's just remarkable. This is a little boy who came to Jim Tucker years ago, and this is what made him think that past life memories are most likely. And I mean, I'll just make a long story very short, but essentially he had memories of life as a World War II pilot, passing away in the Air Force, and he even ended up as a small child meeting his now elderly sister from his previous life and sharing memories with her to the point where she was like, how did he know this about our family? And that's a case worth really delving into, but I would delve into both of their cases because they have remarkable cases. Near-death experiences, there's a lot. I would go to IANS, International Association for Near-Death Studies, also University of Virginia. Dr. Bruce Grayson does wonderful work on this. There's others like Dr. Penny Santori, Dr. Sam Pernia, but yeah, Bruce Grayson, I think, is a great place to start. He has a great book on that. I don't know how time is. I can give examples for all of that, but if you want. And Windbridge, I know I gave examples already about some of their psychic medium studies, Dr. Julie Beischel and Mark Bacuzzi at Windbridge. And they conducted up to quintuple blinded studies on psychic mediums. So those are the best research for those three phenomena.
Okay, so I see this. Were you on NY1 News?
Yeah.
How did that go?
Oh, this was for a totally different thing. You want me to talk about it?
We got a couple minutes. Go ahead.
Oh my God, this is a batshit story. I would say it was the most batshit thing of my life if I hadn't found all this weird stuff. So this is kind of horrible. It involves my friend. When I was an intern over the summer and I had a roommate and she was unfortunately sexually assaulted by Harvey Weinstein. But
wow.
Yeah, I also had a Chihuahua at the time, Peanut. So I'm at like my internship. Harvey tries to bust into our apartment and my Chihuahua chases him around and he gets terrified of my 12-pound Chihuahua and runs out. So like my friend ended up being one of the women testifying against him and I was a secondary witness. And the part of my Chihuahua chasing Harvey around came up in my testimony and that people found that kind of funny and it went viral. And then there's like no simple way to say the other part. I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but like his lawyer was kind of just like said every obnoxious thing you could. And I'll quote a friend because I don't want to sound braggy in any way, but a friend was like, you kind of ripped her a new one in the testimony. And I did. And that went pretty viral too. So then New York One News talked about it and then had, this one was Court TV. Court TV did an episode on my Chihuahua and then New York One News, talked about, I guess, my friend's story and my testimony and my dog. So now my dog is famous, my Chihuahua. So it's like the most, it's an absolutely ridiculous story and
Is
also
the dog
like
still
empowering.
Living? Where's the dog
Sadly,
now?
no, that dog passed away a couple of years ago. And I have a new Chihuahua who I have rescued, Pickles, and Peanut's the little hero, and she passed away a couple of years ago. So that was hard. But she's now famous, and that's so funny. How'd you find the New York One News? Just Googling me? You saw my name on it? Or?
I know everything about you. Before you come on the show, I need to know everything about you. You know, I've seen that what you said, and on your thing, your random topic about testifying against Harvey Weinstein. You know, you secondary accuser. Your testimony went viral, and that's the only thing I couldn't find was the actual testimony.
Ooh, but I can send it to you.
That would be fine. You can send it to me. So, you know, it's that time for the I Be Damn of the week. What happened this week? I forgot what happened this week. Let's see. It was in a bar again. It seems like every weekend I Be Damn is a bar. So I Be Damn is basically a dating story that has went ramshot horribly wrong, but it's funny. Nobody gets hurt, nobody dies, anything like that. So at the end, you'll find a comedic genius out of it. And once I'm finished, I'll just ask you how would you have handled that story that we're getting ready to tell. So we're going to start right now. So I was out at a bar with friends when I got a call from Bert, a guy that I met a few months prior. We only hung out once, and our phone conversations dwindled over time, but nothing the less, I was happy to hear from him as per usual. I addressed him by his middle name, Drew. Told him I'd call him back once I left the bar. When I arrived home, I was excited to call Drew because I wanted to catch up and perhaps set up a time to hang out again. And the conversation went like this. Me, Drew, what up? Nothing much, just chilling. How have you been? I've been well. Can't complain. I see you've been doing pretty awesome. Well, according to Instagram, at least it seems like everybody just checks your Instagram. LOL. I saw you living it up on your birthday, popping bottles, having a good old time. Happy belated, by the way. I see you're a fellow. They didn't say the sign, so I can't tell you what sign it was. Like me, which makes me even cooler. Huh? I think you've mixed me up. Pardon. I swear I saw you on Instagram having a party for your birthday a couple weeks. I don't have Instagram. My birthday isn't for another 2 months. Oh, I took a long pause and immediately grew silent because I couldn't fathom why Bert/Drew was acting all strange. Initially, I thought he was joking because after all, he answered me when I called him by his middle name, Drew. However, he didn't laugh once again during the conversation, which left me a little uneasy. So I took my phone away from my ear to make certain I wasn't tripping. And unfortunately, I was. Not only was I not talking to Bert Drew, I was talking to Berto Jones. Oh, shit. It took me a moment to figure out who the hell Berto Jones was, but then the light bulb finally went off, and I said to myself, oh, you're the guy from the Asian restaurant. Facepalm. I tried to play it off by talking about things that were related to Asian restaurants that we went a couple months prior, but he wasn't feeling it. Understandable. So I quickly ended the conversation. As soon as I hung up, I erupted in hysterical laughter, which grew into confusion because I could not, for the life of me, understand why the fuck was he answering me when I called him Drew. Awkward. Oh, well, you win some, you lose some. And clearly I lost. Moving forward, I'll be triple checking my caller ID before I answer. Sincerely, damn you, alcohol. That is our I Be Damned for the week.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
So how would you handle that situation right there?
Oof. So if the whole thing went down that way, like every part of it, I don't get to change anything along the way. Mm-hmm. Oh God, I'd have to let the second Bert, who's not middle name, the one I accidentally talked to, just have to let it go. I would just probably write him a text and be like, oh, like the next day and be like, LOL, I'm like a dumbass, like too many drinks. Like if I wanted to ever see him again, if I didn't care, I would just probably never talk to him again and laugh about it and feel bad, but like laugh. But I would text him next day and just give it one last chance and be like, haha, I'm a dumbass. Sorry about that. And if he was a cool guy, like you hadn't been serious with him, like I don't think he'd have a reason if it's just like you went on one date with him to be that upset over that. It's kind of funny. If a guy did that to me and, we weren't like dating, I would think it was funny if we'd gone on one date. And that's what I would do. And then if I wanted to talk to the other guy, Drew, I would just probably write him like a text the next morning and be like, hey, looks like you had a really great time at your birthday. Happy birthday. It looks like it was fun. And I would quadruple check. Then I might add one of those like drunken codes on my phone so I don't call people when I'm wasted going forward. But that's really funny.
Oh man. So, but thank you, Liz, for coming over to say hello to us. So if anybody's looking, about, her podcast about afterlife, science, psychic medium, spirituality, or grief, she's on all platforms. I think I gave it to you already, brother. Farilla, put it up on the screen. If I think I gave it to you, here it come. You can find Ms. Liz right there. And what days did your show come on?
My podcast, it's Thursday, but it's not a show. It's just a podcast. New ones upload every Thursday. So you can just listen to them anytime, wherever you get your podcasts. And then I have a book that tells my story, and you can get it on Amazon, and the link's on the website. But yeah, new episodes every Thursday. We have a bunch of, if you're just finding us, we have really great episodes. We have scientists that have studied this. We have mediums. Some people have had some crazy personal experiences. So just check us out. Also, you can link to everywhere you can find it on this website.
All right. So that'll be episode 20, season 3 today. So next week we'll be back again. Damn, I had a brain fart. We'll be back next week, Tuesday, 8 p.m. We're talking about how to get over porn addiction next week. Yeah. Overcoming porn addiction next week at 8 p.m. Same time, same channel, same place, and there'll be another IB Dam as well at 8:30, 8:45. So if you're looking for Liz, just type in WTFJustHappened.net. You can find her on Thursdays with her podcast with the same thing. What the fuck just happened? That's the name of the podcast. So thank you for coming, Liz, and letting us know about the afterlife.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. And once they find out all the science behind it, I'll come back and tell you, and with my Nobel Prize.
I just want to know one thing. When I go, do I get to go in the clothes I'm buried in, or do I what? Like,
oh, I don't know. I hope you get to pick your clothes. I hope you get to do like lots of different clothes and be really trendy and get to wear like awesome new designers. That's what I hope. So.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you. Don't forget to email me that clip.
Thank you so much. I will.
All right. See y'all next week. Okay. We're getting over porn addiction.